So we just finished getting our first data file. That was my ozone data file, and it was a comment-limited file, ready for importing into the toolbox. Now we're going to move on and work on our second data file. So my second data file is a meteorological data file, and it is what I call a DAT file. And what that means is the file name extension is .dat. So it's a DAT file. So I'm going to go into my Analyzer Raw Data folder, and this is where I keep my raw data that comes off my sampler. And since I do not ever manipulate the original files from the sampler, I'm going to make a copy of this file, and here it is, site s46_meteorological.dat. So I'm going to right-click, select copy, and then I'm going to close this, and I'm going to go in my toolbox import files, and I'm going to right click and select paste. So I immediately want to change the file name of this file, and I am just going to right click on it and select rename, and then I'm going to put my cursor right in front of the S, and I'm going to type in manipulated. So I know that this is the file I need to manipulate. And my file is renamed. So now I want to open up the meteorological data file and see how it looks and find out what I need to do to get it ready to import into the toolbox. So I'm going to double click on the file, and I get this message that Windows can't open this file because it doesn't know what it is. So DAT files are usually just text files dressed up in Halloween costumes. So instead of using the web service to find the correct program to open this and all these complicated things that my computer's suggesting, I'm just going to click on cancel on this message box. Since my DAT file is really just a text file dressed up in a Halloween costume, I'm just going to rename the file as a text file, and hopefully that's going to open it up. So I'm going to right click on it and select rename. And when I do that, notice that it doesn't highlight the file name extension of DAT, and that's what I want to change. So I need to highlight that, and I need to be careful not to highlight the dot, just the DAT, just like that. And then I'm just going to type on my keyboard TXT, and then hopefully that's going to change it to a text file or bring it out of its Halloween costume. I typed in TXT, I press enter, and I get this scary message box that says, "This file might become unusable. Are you sure you want to do this?" And yes, I am sure, because I have a copy of this file saved elsewhere, so it's okay if it becomes unusable. As long as I have a copy of it elsewhere, I can do what I want with it. So I make sure that I'm in the Toolbox Import Files folder, because I don't want to do this to the original file. And I click yes. And now let's see if it opens up. So I double click on it, and ta-da! I've got my text file opened up. So I'm going to make this big and take a look at what manipulations I need to perform here. So the first thing I notice is this is not a comma-delimited file, and that is because there is no commas separating the columns. What is separating the columns instead is a space. Now the best way that I am aware of manipulating a space-separated file and changing it into a comma-delimited text file is first importing it into Microsoft Excel and then exporting it out as a CSV, a comma-separated file. So I'm going to bring up my checklist for this file. This is in the notes document for this module, and it says, is this a comma-delimited text file? No, it's not. It's a space-delimited text file. So I cannot check off number 1. Number 2, are there unique headers for each column in row 1? Let's take a look. The column names are actually in row 2. You'll notice row 1 has this extraneous data in it that can be deleted. So that means that the header columns are not in row 1, and I cannot check this off. Something to notice also here is there's a missing column name, and this is very, very difficult to see in this file. When we import it into Excel, we're going to be able to see this much easier. But there's an extra space right here between the output ID and the serial date. So there's a missing column name for the year field here. Data begins in row 2. No, it doesn't, because of that extraneous data here. Data begins in row 3, so I can't check that off either. No blank rows. Let's take a big quick scroll through this. I don't see any blank rows, so I can go ahead and check that one off. Number 5 contains complete dates in common date format or serial date format and times with each new time in a new row. So the dates you'll see are in serial date formats. And what serial date format means, it's also called Julian date. It's formatted such that the number of days that have elapsed since the start of the new year is the date value. So, for example, February 3rd is the 34th day of the year, so its serial date would be 34. So, I can check off number 5. Number 6, concentration or parameter data, which is metadata, has at least one digit after the decimal in the first row of data. So let's look at the first row of data, and that's this row here. And I see right here, this column has a 0, and it doesn't have anything after it, so it's just an integer. It doesn't say 0.0. That's the 6th column, and according to my data logger manual, that's the precipitation column. And it's very common to see this precipitation data because often the first row in your data set is going to be 0, but that doesn't mean that every day you're not going to have any precipitation. So that's something I need to fix. So this is not checked off, number 6. Number 7 contains a known logged in your database logbook number of records. I don't know that yet, so I cannot check that off. Number 8 I can check off because I have a backup copy saved in my other folder that's specifically for the sampler files that I get directly from my analyzer. And of course I can't check off number 9 yet because it's not saved in the Tribal Data Toolbox version 3.0 folder. So let's see what things I need to manipulate here. I need to manipulate 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 9. That's a lot of manipulations to make, and it would be a lot easier to make these in Excel. And also, since it is a space-delimited file and I need to make it into a common delimited file, I need Microsoft Excel to do that. And I'm going to close this for now because I'm going to import the data into Excel. So I'll close this and I will minimize this. So the first thing I want to do is open up Excel. So I go to my Start menu and find Excel. And I want to open a blank workbook. And just so you know, I'm using Office 2013 and things might look slightly different in Office 2007. And if you need help, just let us know and we can help you out on a one-on-one basis if you need that. So to import the Space-Delimited text file into Excel, I need to first go to the data option in the menu. So I click data, and then since it's coming from a text file, in this get external data area, I clicked from text. And that opens up this screen and it says, where is the text file that you want to import? So I need to navigate to that Toolbox import file so that is on my desktop. So here is the folder and I double click on it to open it up. And the file I want is manipulated site s46_meteorological.txt. So I click on that file and then I click on the import button. And that brings up this screen here. It's called the text import wizard. So I need to make some changes in this screen. By default, when this screen pops up, it's set to fixed width, and that's not what I want. I want delimited because, as you can see, characters such as commas or tabs separate each field. And for most of the files that you get off your data logger or your sampler, you're going to want to select delimited. So I'm going to change this here to delimited. And then here it says start import at row 1. And remember, there's that extraneous row of data in my file. So I don't want to start at row 1. I want to start at row 2. So I highlight that and change it to row 2 by typing 2 on my keyboard. And then notice here that the my data has headers is not checked. And you can see the preview of the file right here. My data did have headers, so I need to check off this. So those are the changes I needed to make in that first screen, and then I click on the next button. In this screen, I need to specify what delimiter was used. And the fun thing about this, at least I think it's fun, is that you can change the delimiters and then you can see how that changes your data. So if I select these different delimiters, I can see how my data changes. I don't want all of them selected, so I unselect that and I select comma instead. And I can see the different things that happen to my data here. If you had downloaded data from AQS, you could use the other option, and you could type in the pipe, because most of the data that comes out of AQS is pipe delimited. And you select other, and then you look at your keyboard, you can type in the pipe delimiter. And the pipe delimiter on your keyboard, you type that by pressing Shift and the backslash key. My file is Space-Delimited, so I'm going to select space here. And whoops, I did not mean to leave that selected. You have to be aware of what Excel is doing here. If you don't uncheck it, it leaves it checked. So you don't want to have more than one delimiter checked, even though it lets you do that. So I'm going to uncheck that. And then notice it added the line between my different columns in the file. So with all these other ones, when I selected them, it didn't do anything. So that's how I can tell that space is the one I want. And notice when I do that, Microsoft Excel automatically fills in this treat consecutive delimiters as 1. I don't want that. And the reason I don't want that is because Excel then assigns incorrect column names when the column names are missing. Remember that there's that missing column name between the output ID and the serial date field. And so what happens when this is checked off is the serial date gets put with the year, which is incorrect. And so if I uncheck this, watch what happens. Serial date goes to the correct column and year is blank, which it should be. So pay attention to what Excel is doing when you import data into it. Always watch this data preview pane to see how your data is changing. Also notice that it would seem to indicate that that extraneous row of data is still there in the data preview pane, but rest assured when we finally import the data, it won't be in there. So I'm going to click the next button. And I'm going to leave the column date format. I'm going to leave that as general for each of my columns. And we recommend that you leave that as general unless you have some reason for changing it. So that's everything I need to do in this screen since I don't need to change anything. And I'm going to click on the Finish button. And what this says is, where do you want to put the data? Right now it's in the existing workbook and the cell is A1. You want to check to make sure this is A1. If it's anywhere else, you need to move your cursor to cell A1, because if it's like this, you don't want that. You want it to be A1. Now I'm going to click OK, and it's going to go into my file. So now the text file has been imported into Microsoft Excel. And as you can see, that extraneous row of data is now gone. Like I told it to, it did not import it into my spreadsheet. And I can also very clearly see the year column name is missing. And it's easier for me to add this column name in Microsoft Excel than it is in my text file. So I'm just going to click in that cell and type in year. And now I have all my column names in the Excel file. So now that I have my complete column names and my data begins in row 2, I can go ahead and check those off in my checklist. Unique headers and data begins in row 2. The other manipulations that I need to perform on this data set are easier and more reliable if I do them in the text file itself. So I am going to start working on exporting this file into a comma delimited text